Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on another one of our Microsoft Teams webinars. Today, we have our Cloud Solutions Specialist, Bruce Knight, who is going to be delivering the content of today's session. Before I hand you over to him, I'm just going to run through some very quick housekeeping with you all. During the webinar, you will be muted, but if you have any questions, please submit them via the questions box at the right-hand side of the screen. And we'll have a very short Q&A session at the end where we can read these questions out to be answered. There will be a recording of the webinar, so if you could just fill in the feedback form at the very end of the webinar, it's just like 2 or 3 questions, because we really do appreciate your feedback on these sort of sessions, and then we can share the recording with you. So before I hand over, I will just change screens and pass you over to Bruce.
Okay, thanks, Cassie. Good morning, everybody. So today we are going to be talking about Microsoft Teams and the Power Platform. So I guess over the last couple of weeks or months, we've kind of tried to theme most of our webinars around Microsoft Teams. And today is pretty similar. We will be talking about the Power Platform. So I'll introduce really quickly what Power Platform is all about and what's included, and then how you can use Power Platform with Microsoft Teams. So I'll present a few slides, give you a quick update, and then jump into some demo where we'll create an app, create a flow on the back of that app, and also automate a few processes behind that, and show you how to push that into Teams and publish apps into Teams. So hopefully you'll learn something new. If you haven't had much chance to look into the Power Platform before, I'm hoping this will at least spark some ideas so you can learn more and then use it in your own organization. So Microsoft Teams is really great to be that single hub for work, but when you combine that with Power Platform and you start to publish some of your own line of business apps or partner apps into that environment as well, your end users can keep their focus within the Teams hub, so they don't have to jump out and click on other URLs and get moved to different screens. They can do everything through a single sort of app. So over the past couple of weeks, as mentioned, we've had a few of these in the series, and one of the previous sessions we spoke about how some of the native productivity apps kind of work inside Microsoft Teams. So we went into a little bit more detail around Planner, Microsoft Stream, Forms. We showed you some more around how some of these productivity apps would work and how you can use them to collaborate within Teams. And so today we'll focus more on taking some of those processes that you may have today and how you could possibly automate those and create apps and then publish them into Teams or to mobile devices. And then that'll all sort of hinge around the Power Platform. So we'll focus more today on Flow, which is sort of been rebranded as Power Automate. Still has flows inside it, but they've added a couple of additional pieces to it, so they've rebranded to Power Automate. And we'll obviously look into Power Apps, and there's a couple of different things, and I'll quickly take you through what is Power Apps and what is Flow. And then obviously Power BI is also part of Power Platform, but we won't jump into too much detail around Power BI today. We haven't got that much time, so we'll focus on just these 2 elements today. But certainly you could include Power BI into your apps or put them into dashboards in Teams. And they can obviously help to integrate and streamline some of your processes as well. So really quickly, just to give you a quick overview, if you're not too familiar yet with Power Apps, what is Power Apps? It's a way to easily build apps with low code or no code, and you can take those apps and publish them to iOS or Android devices or to Windows PC through web. And you can also then publish those into Teams, is what we'll showcase today. There's lots of pre-built connectors that you can connect into for source data. So if you're using PowerApps and Flow with Office 365, for example, you can connect to SharePoint Lists, Excel documents in OneDrive, and with the sort of, I guess, licenses that you get in Office 365, the basic connectors apply there, and you can connect from those sources, create apps and flows without needing to purchase additional licenses. If you want to start using premium connectors or connect through a gateway to on-prem data sources, then you would require to purchase additional licenses. There's been some changes recently around how PowerApps and Flow are licensed in that space. We can have detailed sessions on that at a later date. We won't be able to cover into too much detail around that licensing mechanism. But there's, just now ways to do to license per app or per flow. So that's, I guess, quick overview on what's changed there. And then, of course, if you wanted to integrate into things like Dynamics 365, Azure, you can do that as well. And also backed by strong security and governance. So, recently we did a session around security and governance of Teams, and pretty much the same way you would secure your Teams environment, you could create conditional access policies and use MFA when you're logging into your apps that you create through PowerApps as well. So it's basically 3 different types of apps that you can create when you go into PowerApps. We'll focus on Canvas apps today. That's where most of the basic connectors come into play and easily connect into SharePoint lists and Excel files and OneDrive and those kinds of sources. Model apps or model-driven apps sort of hinge more around data-driven type sources. So specifically, I guess, if you're looking to create apps in your Dynamics 365 environment, you'd probably use model-driven apps. And then portals are a great way to create apps through website sort of portals and then publish those to your customers. So if you're looking to design and create websites, you could use PowerApps for that piece as well, and then integrate into your CDS environment. Microsoft Flow, sort of similar approach here, help to automate workflows and business processes. Also lots of pre-built connectors, so 230 plus connectors, lots of source sort of connectors that you may also want to think about how you govern those so that data doesn't leak out through some of those pre-built connectors. So there's lots of those consumer type applications like Google Docs or OneDrive Personal. And so you could go into the backend in the admin center and create some DLP policies to restrict which connectors your users are allowed to connect into with PowerApps and Flow, and maybe just sort of define those business apps that they're allowed to connect to. So maybe only sources that you have control over, like things like SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, SQL, and there's a whole host of sort of apps where you may want to allow your users to connect into to either pull data from or publish data into through Flow or PowerApps. So just some considerations when you look at governance for PowerApps and Flow. And there's lots of good content on how to do that. We won't go into too much detail today, but we can certainly discuss that in more detail through a one-to-one meeting at a later stage. Just connect with your Byte account manager. I think there'll also be in the eval form at the end of the session, just put a note in there that you'd like to maybe go into a bit more detail around governance and security for PowerApps and Flow, and we could do that through a one-to-one session. So what does Flow do? It's great to get notifications. So it could be that, when an item gets added to a list, you want to be notified, and Flow could be that mechanism to notify you through different platforms like email and Teams. And so it's great for that piece. Copy files. For example, you might get an email in with an attachment and you want to copy that file into your OneDrive for Business or into a SharePoint document library. Collect data. Good example there could be you're monitoring a Twitter feed, and anytime somebody tweets or retweets something, you want to take that and publish that into a SharePoint list, for example. And then obviously automate approvals. So you might have a document library, and when you drop a file in there, you want an approval process to kick off, and Flow is really great at automating approval. So that sort of lazy approval approach, where you can approve something in Teams or email or through the Flow app itself. And there are 4 different types of flows. So the scheduled flows is, I guess, something you would have a schedule once a week, once a day, and that could be, you might be working off a form that pushes data into an Excel spreadsheet, and once a day you wanted to go in there, check whatever new lines have been created, and take that data and email it off to somebody, or email an invite to whoever's filled out the form. And so that would be an example of a scheduled flow. Automated flows would be triggered on, say, a file creation or a new list item being added to a SharePoint list. Instant flows are more around, I guess, a button type flow. So you could create a button, and then when you click that button through the Flow app, for example, it could do something like email your manager that you're working from home today, and perhaps book out some space in your calendar at the same time. So it's a great way to create some buttons. When you hit that button, it'll kick off that flow. So that'll be the trigger for that flow. And then business process flows helps you to sort of streamline a business process. So that could be different stages of a process, and business process flows are a fairly new concept, but we will focus today more on automated flows. And so then in summary, we'll, after this slide, I'll jump into some demo, and we'll create a quick app. We'll then create some flows to then notify that a new list item has been created from that app. And then we'll also go into, I'll show you how, for example, you might have a document library that has sales proposals in it, and if somebody wants to get approval on that, how you could leverage flows to help with that process. Okay, so if you're new to PowerApps and Flow, a great way to get started, I guess, is if you have a process today that's fairly manual, I guess, or even a paper-based sort of process. You have field type workers, they go out on site, they have a clipboard, and they fill in information on a piece of paper. That's a great example where you could automate that process to save a lot of time. Something that I often demo, and I'll do today as well, is often when I go and see customers, when I get to reception and I sign in, they've got a piece of paper there. You see all the people before you that have signed in, so lots of personal information sort of sits on those pieces of paper when you sign in at reception. And so I thought, as part of this webinar, we'll just create a sign-in app through PowerApps, and you could then take that app, publish it onto a kiosk device, like an iPad, I guess, at reception desk, or publish it into Teams for the receptionists to use to sign in new guests. So however you want to use that, it could be just self sign in, or through a reception who's going to log in and then sign in guests through that process. And once you sign somebody in, it will then notify the employee, whoever the guest there to see, that their visitor has arrived and they should come down and fetch him. So a fairly basic type of app, but I think it sort of could showcase or example on how you could take that sort of paper-based process and automate it, and use PowerApps and Flow to help streamline that piece. And in the same way, I guess, also protecting that type of personal information in a more secure way. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to use as my data source a SharePoint list. So if you're not familiar with lists, it's kind of just columns and rows. You create your own custom columns. So I've really created pre this session just to, in the interest of time, speed things up. But you can easily add additional columns, lots of different types of columns you can add. So date, person, choice. So if you wanted to add to this list, you can easily add some new columns, and when you build your app off that, you'll be able to use those data sources or columns and rows to publish into your app. So I've just put in here full name. So this is the name of the visitor. Do they require parking? So did they park at your venue? The reason for visit, what their registration is. So we might want to just move that across. So we have parking, we have registration, we have reason for business. This is a drop down, so business, personal, or delivery, for example, the date and time that they arrived, and then the 2C person. And this one here, I guess, is quite an important one, and this is a person column so that I can use a SharePoint security group or use Azure AD to look up that person, so it'll autofill when the guests sign in. And then we can then use this to pull the email address of Alex or whoever the 2C person is to send notifications or approvals or whatever the case may be. And so once you have your sort of source data, we can, especially if you're using SharePoint, it's really easy to get started. So there's these buttons that you'll see at the top of the list. The same applies for if you were creating a Flow app out of a document library. And I click on the drop down and say create app. Give it a name. Is there one that's called it? Let me just call it V2 in case I've done this one before. And we hit create. And what's nice now is that in the background, while I'm waiting, it's busy connecting all the bits and pieces together to make it easier for me to get going really quickly with building this app. So I don't have to, start from a blank canvas and then connect up my data sources. It knows because I triggered this off from a SharePoint list that's the data source. It knows I need to populate some information through an edit screen. Perhaps I want a detailed screen that shows all those different items in the rows. So it's got this 3-screen app already built out for me. It's pretty basic, and maybe you want to make it look better, so it's quite easy to customize, and I'll show you how to do that. And there may be some information in here that you don't want the guest users to see, so you could take some information out of here as well. But it's something that I could already straight away go in and preview this, and I have my app. I can add new items straight away. So it's a fully functional app, and I can publish it straight away, but we'll make it look just a bit nicer. So first off, we'll start a new screen. So it'll be a blank screen, and this will be the kind of sign-in screen. So the start screen for this app. So rather than go straight into the browse screen, we'll make it go to a start screen first. And so I've moved that right to the top, and I'll rename that to my start screen. And by default, it's created a mobile sort of app for me. So you'll see it's the same. It's a portrait type app, but you can go in and if you wanted to create a different sort of type of app, you could change screen size and orientation, landscape, portraits, if you wanted to scale to fit. So there's different things you can do here to change the size and orientation of your apps. The icons, the colors, you could upload your own icon, so you can customize those pieces as well. But I'll keep it as default for now. And in here, we want to just maybe add some media. So I'll insert some media. We want to put an image in there. So perhaps just company logo, for example, just make it look a bit nicer. So we'll just spread that out a little bit. Move that up. So just sort of, insert a picture frame here. Then we go to the image piece on the right-hand side, add image file. And that one looks good. So I'll just pop that in there. And perhaps we want a button. So the sign-in button, we can move that to here. So you can see it's fairly easy in terms of no code, just dragging and dropping things, clicking buttons. Here I want the button to be called sign in. And we'll add some functions to the back of that in a minute. And one last piece just to make it look a little bit nicer, I guess. We'll put something at the bottom here. And perhaps you have lots of locations or branches. So this could be the sign-in app for the London office. That's not looking too bad. I'm not the best at designing, but don't have to be. As long as it looks okay and is functional, that's good enough for me. So then we have the makings of our start screen. And when I sign into this, I basically wanted to go to the edit screen and start a new form. So we wanted to get in here, have no detail in here, so a brand new form. And perhaps I'll edit some of these values, but so just for me to update that button, I always like to work off something and copy and paste rather than reinvent the wheel. So I know this button here does the same thing that's already been created for me. So I'm just going to copy and paste. So what this is doing is just saying, when you hit that button, new form, use edit.form1. So that's down in the edit screen, and then no screen transition when you click that button. So navigate to edit screen 1 and no transition. So I'll just copy that. I'll go back to my start screen, click on this button and paste it in here. And that'll do the same thing for me. So once I'm ready, I can just test it out. So I hit the play button, sign in, yeah, and that's going to the right place. So it's a good start. And now I want to just edit some fields in the edit screen. So by default, when you create a SharePoint list, for some reason it adds an attachments field. I don't want that to be visible, so I can just slide that off. And maybe I want to just add that image again at the bottom just to have some consistency. So I'll drag that across. And maybe I want to move that, send it to the back. And we'll use the same skyline image that we used previously. Fill that out. And there we go, looks okay. The parking field was a yes, no sort of button. You can modify this to show as radio buttons instead. But you can decide how you want that to see, or you might want to just turn off the label. So you could say here that we don't want to see the label and just turn that off. You can move things around. You can customize it some more. Maybe you want to do a rule that says when you slide the parking, so if they had parking, then they need to require this field to be filled in. If not, then hide this field. So if they didn't arrive by car, what they don't need to fill in registration, so you could hide that. So you could build in some logic around that. And all the fields will show up here. So if you want to hide some, move them up and down through the through this list of here, you can just drag them up and down. So fairly easy to manage the fields that live inside this edit screen. So that's looking okay so far. I think we're pretty happy with that. I'll go back to the start screen, just test it out again. So Contoso, sign in, we go to this page. Yeah, looks pretty good. If I go back, that's nice. So we've got the makings now of our app. I could save and publish this. I could also go in here and just remove some of these screens, but you could also create perhaps a different view for a manager or somebody else that needs to go in, and then you'd lock down some of these screens or remove them, or create a separate app off the same data for different purposes. So you certainly could just go in and take out some screens that you don't need that were pre-populated. I'm going to leave it in there because there's no way to navigate through to those from the screens that I've created. And in the interest of time, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'll go and save this now. So once you're finished with your app, you just save it and then publish. So we'll publish this version. And the last piece, obviously, you want to share it with your organization. So that could be individuals, it could be the entire organization. So you could put in everyone over here, or you could just be for a reception distribution list. So up to you how you want to share. I'll just add a couple of individual people. And then you could also make them co-owners of the app. So if they were helping you create and build the app, you could make these users co-owners, or one of them co-owner, so they could help you. And then you can decide whether you want to send an email invitation to the new user. And that's it. And so then from a mobile perspective, your end users would have a PowerApps app deployed to their mobile device. They could go into that PowerApps container, find a new app that's been published, and pin that app to their start screen if they wanted to get easy access straight into that app, or just leave it in there. And any new versions they could publish will automatically update the app on the end user's device. If you're using things like Intune, you could use that to publish PowerApps to the user's devices that are managed through Intune as well. So that's great. But for the purposes of today, we're not really looking at the mobile side of things. We want to potentially take this app and maybe add it to Teams. So you'll see there's a new button that now lives within the space. This fairly new feature. I think it was announced at Ignite a couple of weeks back. And so it makes it now really easy to add an app that you've created into Teams. So if I hit this add to Teams, and you can edit some of the details here if you wanted to. You download that package. And you can always, I guess, pin apps to, say, a channel in a team. But the nice thing about if you download the package like this and add it as a custom app, you can then make it available for anybody to find themselves. So you'll have, when you go into apps, you'll have your organization name's own custom apps. And they can then just select it from there rather than them having to do the same process every time. You can publish it once and then allow a user to find it themselves and add it into Teams. So I've downloaded the sign-in app v2 and it's over there. So we've pretty much now finished creating our app, but we want to maybe add a few bits and pieces around when somebody submits a new item. So when they go into the app and they add a new guest, we want some automation to happen in the background. So it's all good and well that somebody comes in and we sign them in, but we want to just automate the process around notifying the 2C person over here. So when a new item gets added to the app, it'll push it into this SharePoint list. And so now we can create a flow off the back of this, and we can have a trigger when a new item gets created in this list. So I'm going to go into flow. So we're back in the list. And we'll create a new flow. And really easy one. There's lots of templates. You can create a whole bunch more. You could start from a blank canvas again and just build out your flow. I always find it easier to start from the source so that you don't have to spend time connecting them all up. So I'll just use a one that's already in here and then customize it to suit me a little bit better. So send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item gets added. So that'll be a good start for me. And it'll just check permissions. And I'll go in and start to edit this flow. So I might want to just rename this Teams webinar demo flow. And so what we've got going on here is when a new item is created, it's already put in the list that I'm working off. So you'll see here the URL for that list, and then the list name is sign-in app. So that's all good, and it's connected up for me. It then looks at getting some details through my profile, and then we'll send an email. You may want to just change some options in the advanced side of things. So maybe you want that email address to be coming from reception or a different alias rather than the person that or the user that actually submits that list item. So you can change that those details here. We could publish this flow to the actual list. So it all depends on how you want to set that up, but certainly is possible to do. And so in here, then we want to just modify that email. So we want the email to get sent to the 2C email from that list. So, the visitor puts in the person they're going to see, and we want to take that 2C person and add the email address to the to field. In the subject line, we'll say here, we say your visitor, and we want to use the full name of that list. Your visitor full name has arrived. And then in here, we'll also take this all out. And we'll say hi. Once again, we want to use the 2C person display name. So hi display name, your visitor, and we'll take the full name. Has arrived. Please fetch him from reception. And you could add some more detail here if you want to do like reason for visit. And date and time, perhaps. And make it look, I guess, a little bit nicer. I'll just say regards, whoever you want over there. And so that pretty much will do the job, I think, for now. You can spend more time also just sort of formatting the email to look really good. And so now we should have a working flow that's when the new item gets created, it's going to send us an email. But for the purposes of this, we also want to push this notification into Teams. I guess the whole focus around the session is Teams. So you'll see I can easily add a new item. And if I click on Teams, there's a lot of functions that I can sort of add here. And so what we want to do is post a message as the flow bot to a user. I could also post it to a channel, but this is specifically it's a guest for a specific user, so we don't want to post this message into a whole channel unless you might want to do it for a department, and then so if that person's not available, somebody else could see that message and go down and fetch them. But for the purposes of this, we'll just do it, post a message as flowbot to the user. And then it's pretty much the same as what we've done in this email one. So the headline will be pretty much this subject here. So I'm going to see if I can just copy this out, and rather than redo everything and paste it in here. The recipient would be the 2C email. And the message. And we'll just copy this to save us time. And so there we have now two steps that will happen once the new item gets created. It will be send an email and post the message. So you may only want to have one, that's up to you, but we'll just have them both in here. And so I'm hoping now we save this, and we should be good to go. So we can either publish that app now to an iPad or a mobile device that they can use at reception to sign in users, or self-sign in on a kiosk device, or I'm just going to show you how to push that into Teams. So we've got a reception team, and I've just got a general channel over here, but potentially I want to just create a new channel for my new app and to have a sign-in channel, I guess. I can make it private, but we'll keep it as standard. And we'll just say add. And so I want to perhaps publish that app in here. But before I do that, I need to upload that package that I created after I finished building the app. So if I go to apps down the bottom left here, you'll see there's upload a custom app. And for this to work, you might have to, there's a control, you might have to just turn it on inside the Teams admin console for it to work, because I think by default, it won't allow you to upload custom apps. So you might want to turn that on, and then I can go to downloads, and there's my sign-in app v2 that I created, and we'll upload into Teams. And then it will add it to a list of my own built for Contoso apps. So these are other apps that I've created and published. And now anyone who goes in to the apps section will be able to use the app. So that's pretty much all good. And I can now click on that app and say, I could add it so that it shows up down the left-hand side here as one of my apps. So I might want to do that. And I can just add that app for my own personal use. And you can make this app responsive so it kind of stretches across. I'll show you an example of one with a different different aspect ratio. So I created another one, but you could put some responsive sort of logic into it so that it expands or contracts depending on the size of the screen. So that's one I just created as a tablet app. And this is my sign-in app v2, which we just created. In the future, on the roadmap, you'll be able to pin these apps down the side here. So you could have these apps pinned down rather than having to go to the ellipses every time, and then use it to sign in. The other option would be to go into the Teams, go to the sign-in channel that I just created, and I could publish that app as a tab at the top here. So I could go back to apps, go back to Build for Contoso, and you'll see there's my sign-in app v2. And if I hit the drop down here, I can say add to a team. And we want to go to general. It looks like my new channel hasn't shown up yet. It's probably still populating across, so I'll just publish it into the general channel for now. And I could post this to the channel to let everybody know that we've got this new app that's been created. And there would be my sign-in app as a tab at the top here. I could go in here and maybe just manually add this in if I don't want to do it through the other mechanism. So here I could do, I guess the older school way of doing it would be you click on PowerApps, you find the app that you have access to, so the sign-in app v2, post the channel and save. And that's another way you can add the app. And there it is in my sign-in channel that I've just created. And so now I'm hoping that when we sign in new guests here, so if I put in somebody, say Bruce Wayne has come to visit, reason for his personal, he parked back one, today's date, and 11 o'clock. And easier to see Megan. There we go. And you might want to put a submit button down the bottom instead of using the tick at the top here. Easy enough just to add a new button. Sometimes create one for that, but here I can submit the guest. So he's signed in now, and hopefully I should get a notification that, there we go. So you'll see this little pop-up. So the whoever they have to see will get this message in Teams. I can go and have a look, and it's posted by this Flowbot. So the nice thing is I can see all my notifications from the Flowbot in one place. I can also go and have a look at my own flows that I've created with this Flowbot. If I've created any approval flows, this way I can go to see those approvals. So it's a great place to go in just to sort of use Flow in Teams again. So received, sent, and then history. So any flows that I've approved, I can go in here and see what the outcomes were. And it's a great place to get everything in one space. And yeah, I can see your visitor Bruce Wayne has arrived, and that message that I created in that flow has been populated here. So Bruce Wayne has arrived. Hi Megan, your visitor Bruce Wayne is here. Please fetch him at reception. I should have also got an email doing a similar thing. So there's my email. So like I said, you probably want to format that just to look a bit nicer in email, I guess. You can do that. but there I've got a notification in 2 different places, and I know that I can come down and see my visitor and pick him up. So just a really, I guess, simple example on how you can leverage PowerApps and Flow and publish into Teams. A nice thing to do as well is to use Flow as an app with inside Teams. So especially from that conversation piece, if you're getting approvals, here's a great way to track them all out and see which ones have been approved and which ones are still pending, and just get the history out. So I often use this space to catch up on all my flows and create new ones. So you can certainly do that, or you could go to flow.microsoft.com and create them through there. But the whole purpose is to stay focused in the single hub to do everything, and so you can do that through here. And so the last piece that I want to demo is using a document library in SharePoint. And it's a fairly, I guess, common scenario as well when I've spoken to customers in the past. And if I go to, for example, a sales document library, and we've got this document library called Sales Proposals. And in this document library, my team or our sales team would upload any new sales proposal and then kick off once it's ready. So they could be working on a proposal with a couple of different people and collaborating. And once they're ready to get approval, a flow will then be kicked off manually. So, you could have a trigger as soon as a file gets uploaded into this document library. I've chosen to create a flow that will trigger when I select the item. So, for example, if I highlight this document that I'm working on, and I then go to flow, you'll see my new sales proposal approval flow over there, and that will trigger off an action to then get an approval. So I've started creating that flow already. So I'm just going to go into my flows, and so I can jump back into Teams, I guess, and just have a look at my flows over here. Because I just want to, right now, it sends an approval flow to email only. So I'm going to add in a piece that allows me to approve that flow through Teams as well. So if I look at the sales proposal approval flow, I can see for a selected file. So if I drop that down, you'll see that there's a flow that's kicking off on the sales and marketing SharePoint team sites, and on the document library. And a really nice piece that you can also add into your flows is this ability to add some inputs. So when I kick off that flow, I want to have a message box that's, that's a little message that the user can type in, and that'll be the message to the manager on, please approve this flow, or please approve this sales proposal, and just put some detail around that. You can add some additional fields. I've put one here for the value of that opportunity, for example, so value in GBP, and then a sort of numeric value. Maybe I want to add something else like just some more text, and that could be just customer name, for example, just to help separate out some of the detail, so that when this person's manager goes to approve it, he can really just quickly see, oh, this is for this customer, the opportunity value is this much. Then you can click into the actual proposal and read more, but you may already know some bits and pieces about it through using these values that you can populate in here. And in here, you can just please enter customer name. And then I can use these fields further down in my flow. So the next step here is to get some of those file properties. And that's just saying, so when I click to start a flow, that it's going to use a unique ID of field. And this is kind of all pre-populated just out the box from my document library. I did a similar thing that I did with the lists, where I started the flow from the document library, and it built out some of these pieces for me, and I'm just sort of customizing them now. And so what's going to happen then after it's got the properties is we're going to go to this condition. What will happen if the file's not found? So just building in some error logic here, and this kind of gets populated by default, but it helps in case, for whatever reason, if that file gets deleted during the middle of that process, for example, it's add some logic to that piece. If yes, what's going to happen? If no, then something else happens, for example. So if yes, it gets my profile, gets my manager's profile, and then sends an email to an approval to my manager. Actually, I'm going to pop this out because it's a bit, I guess, easier to work with this outside of on a bigger screen. Let's go back into this so it's not so squashed up. So let's go back down and hopefully it saved my new field. Yep. Okay. And so we will create this approval. And in the approval, I've got the message, and that's coming from here, the message that the user enters. It's got the value. So I'm just going to quickly add customer name. And then I can insert that new file property customer. So it's creating this sort of approval card or adaptive card that I can also use now in different channels. So right now it's just, it creates the approval, it hits it to me in Flow, and I can see it in email to approve. But I also want to add a step here. So it creates approval, it then waits for an answer on that approval, it then has some conditions that kick off, but I'm going to add another quick step here. Add an action. So what do we want to happen as well is we want to go into post a message to either a channel or a user. We'll send it to a user, but this could be an approval that might go to a channel, maybe to a sales manager's channel, and either one of them could approve it. So it could be that one person needs to approve or everybody needs to approve it before it's marked as approved, and you can build that into your approval flow. So I'm going to use this post your own adaptive card as a flow bot to the user, and we're going to use the email field that we've used here. So it's assigned to the same person, and we can grab email from here. And use that. And in the message, we just want to use the adaptive card. So we've created this card already. There's no need for me to copy and paste and recreate that. I can just insert this adaptive card because it's going to pull it from everything I've put out in here. And so that's pretty much all I need to do now to hopefully get the approval flow to push into Teams as well. And so what's going to happen then is it creates approval. It's going to send out an email notification to approve. It's going to hopefully post it to the user via the flow bot. It will then wait for that approval. Once I get the approval, so the manager has gone in and approved it. If yes, inform the request of approval. So they're just saying, you know, your sales proposal has been approved. But then I've also added this update file property. So I created a new column in my document library over here. So I created a status column, and just to track whether it's been approved or rejected, I've built that into the flow to say once it gets approved as yes, then just update that column that I added to that document library, the outcome of that approval. So if yes, it'll be approved. If no, it'll be rejected. And so I've just added those pieces in to my yes branch and my no branch. And that's pretty much it. So I'll save that. And we'll go back to our sales and marketing document library. And so I've got a few files that we've been working on here. And so I can take, for example, let's have a look at this Mark-A proposal that we've been working on. And I can hit the ellipses here, or I can select it from up top. And I go to Flow. and there's my sales proposal approval flow. So we want to trigger this off manually. And what's great is that now it'll pop up those blocks that I've added in the beginning of that flow. So this is where I say, hey boss, please approve. It's a really big deal. The value 250,000, and the customer name is SA Adventure Works, and we'll run that flow. And so now it'll hopefully trigger off that flow in the background. My manager, Miriam, who I've logged into in a separate browser session, will hopefully get that approval. So let's have a look. I've got a new chat there, and so here's that approval card now that's been pushed to me in Teams. So I'm logged in as Miriam. I don't know if you can see it over there. And so Miriam would get this notification into Teams. Should also get the email notification. So if I hopped into email, just to show you what that looks like. So approval request, and it's that sort of nice lazy approval where I get the email, I approve or reject it, or I go into Teams, so that notification will pop up in Teams, and I can approve or reject it in Teams. Or you could go into your Flow app, or into Flow in Teams, and go to your approvals place over here, and you'll see this recent approval from today. Hey boss, please approve, it's really urgent, or it's a really big deal, and I can approve it from here. But I'm going to go back to the Flowbot, and I'll approve it from here, and I can just enter some comments. Good luck, and I'll approve that. Submit. And hopefully that's now will send notification to me that it's been approved. There it is. So it has approved your market proposal. It always includes a link to the actual document, so the manager can go in and view the document really quickly without having to search for it or find it. So just click on the URL and it'll take them straight there. So I get a notification back saying it's done, and then hopefully it's updated here to say approve as well. So there it is. This new market proposal is marked as approved. And that's it. So hopefully two examples of how you could use PowerApps and Flow and then integrate it back into Teams to help streamline some processes in your organization. So as mentioned, if you'd like to go into a little bit more detail, please put that in the eval at the end of the session. Or if you want to just connect up with your sales account manager, you can do that as well, and they can help schedule a one-to-one session to go into a bit more detail around some of these pieces that I've spoken to you about today. And with that, I'll hand back to Cassie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce. That was great. We've just got a couple of questions, which I think we've just about got time for. So we've got, can apps be shared with external users? For example, could it be used for a client portal? How would they download it to their mobile phones?
Yeah, so you could publish, now I guess where you might use Power Apps would be in that website portal type Power App. And they could then access it through a website type experience through a browser. If you wanted to give it as an app to an iOS or Android phone, they would need to you need to create them as a guest in your tenant. Then they'd need to use Power Apps to publish it into their iOS. So it's a bit trickier if it's external users apps that they're not part of your Azure Active Directory to get that piece to work. But you might then create a user for them in your tenant and allow them to use it like that. But yeah, I guess it's more built for, especially around this kind of thing, for users of your own organization.
Great. And can you edit a flow, and what impact does your change have on running flows?
You can edit flows that you've created. So once you've created a flow, you can go back and make changes. So for example, the one I just created, I edited it. If there was a flow in process while you're editing it, it will still try and finish that one off. And then the next flow that gets triggered will go through the new process. So, and then there's a really great way to track or test your flows as well. So once you're in a flow, you can use test over here, and then you could either do that through a previous run, or if it's one of those that you can trigger the action, you can get this piece to trigger it, but in terms of this flow, I can't trigger it through this piece. I'll have to use an existing one. And so I was playing around with this yesterday, and some of them failed, so I was tracking it to see where it failed in the process. It'll show you it's tick, 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 and then the cross where it didn't work. And so you can test your flows and check them and make sure they're working before you publish them to a document library or to a list, for example. But yeah, you can certainly change them and edit them.
Great, perfect. Okay, so that's about all we've got time for today. I'll let everybody be free to go for the rest of their day and the rest of their calls and meetings. I hope everybody found that useful. If you do have just like a minute to fill out the feedback form at the end, just like 2 or 3 questions, we really do appreciate it. So yeah, thank you, Bruce, and thank you everybody for joining us this morning, and I hope you all have a great day.
Great, thank you.